transport shuttle's engines hummed as it approached the massive space station that housed the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. Commander Zethkar of the Valorian Empire watched through the viewport as dozens of sleek vessels from across known space delivered their finest young warriors to the Celestial Defense Institute. For 300 years, this academy had trained the galaxy's elite forces, producing the most skilled tacticians, pilots, and soldiers the universe had ever seen. "Final approach to Docking Bay 7, announced the pilot, his scaled hands dancing across crystalline controls. The academy stretched before them like a small moon, its gleaming spires and training facilities visible through the transparent aluminum barriers that contained its atmosphere. Zethkar's attention shifted to the manifest in his clawed hands. Representatives from 47 different species would begin their training today. Kethamori warriors known for their lightning reflexes, Gorlan siege specialists whose thick hides could withstand plasma fire, and telepathic Velthari who could coordinate fleets with their minds alone. Each species brought their unique advantages to the Galactic Defense Force. But one entry on the manifest puzzled him. Listed simply as Kira Chen, species classified, home system restricted. No additional information, no species designation, no recorded capabilities. In his 2 decades of service, Zethkar had never seen such sparse documentation for an academy candidate. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that resonated through the hull. As the airlock cycled open, Zethkar gathered his equipment and prepared to disembark. The Academy's orientation chamber buzzed with activity as hundreds of young beings from across the galaxy mingled for the first time. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric requirements, creating a complex symphony of scents and sounds. Near the far wall, he spotted her. The mysterious student from the classified file stood apart from the crowd, observing rather than socializing. She appeared remarkably ordinary compared to her fellow students. Where others bore natural armor, enhanced musculature, or specialized sensory organs, she seemed almost fragile. Her pale skin lacked the protective scales of most spacefaring races. Her limbs appeared thin compared to the powerful builds surrounding her, and her eyes held no visible enhancements for seeing in different spectrums of light. Instructor Velnara, a towering Gorlak female whose species had never lost a ground conflict, called for attention. Her voice, amplified by vocal enhancers, cut through the chatter like a plasma blade through steel. "Welcome to the Celestial Defense Institute. You are here because your species has identified you as their finest warriors. Over the next 4 years, you will be forged into the galaxy's ultimate defenders." The students straightened, each displaying their species' version of military attention. Zethkar noticed the human remained relaxed, her posture casual but alert. She seemed to be cataloging everything around her, from exit points to the positions of security drones hovering near the ceiling. "Your first challenge begins now," Velnara continued, her massive frame casting shadows across the assembled group. "You will be sorted into training squads of 8 members each. These squads will compete in every aspect of your education: academic performance, combat trials, strategic simulations, and survival exercises. The squad that finishes last in monthly evaluations will face immediate expulsion." A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. Many of these students had never faced real competition before, being the absolute best their worlds had to offer. Now they would compete against equally exceptional beings from across the galaxy. Holographic displays materialized above the crowd, randomly sorting students into their assigned squads. Zethkar watched as the human was placed into Squad Omega, along with 7 other students who looked less than pleased with their assignment. Their squad included Brutus, a Gorlak heavy assault specialist whose species had conquered 12 systems through pure military might. Valkyra, a Kethamori scout whose people could move faster than most sensors could track. Threx, a cybernetically enhanced mechanite whose integrated weapon systems were visible beneath his metallic skin. The squad's other members were equally impressive in their own ways. Each brought decades of specialized training and genetic advantages honed by their species over millennia of warfare. They looked at their human squad mate with barely concealed disdain, clearly viewing her as the weak link that would drag them down. "Squad assignments are final," Velnara announced. "You will live together, train together, and succeed or fail together. Your dormitory assignments are being transmitted to your personal devices now. Classes begin at dawn cycle tomorrow." As the crowd began to disperse, Zethkar approached the human student. Up close, she was even more unremarkable than he had initially thought. No visible cybernetic enhancements, no apparent genetic modifications, no specialized equipment beyond a simple datapad and personal belongings. "Kira Chen," he said, reading from his manifest. "I am Commander Zethkar, Academy Liaison Officer. I notice your file contains several restricted sections. Is there anything special I should know about your training requirements?" The human looked up at him with dark eyes that seemed to hold depths he couldn't quite fathom. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured. "No special requirements, Commander. I'm here to learn like everyone else." Something in her tone suggested there was far more to this seemingly ordinary being than her appearance indicated. Zethkar had learned to trust his instincts during his years of service, and those instincts were telling him that this human represented something unprecedented in the Academy's long history. As Squad Omega gathered their belongings and headed toward their assigned dormitory, the other students continued to eye their human member with skepticism. They had no way of knowing that they had just encountered a representative of a species that had spent the last 50,000 years learning to survive on one of the galaxy's most hostile worlds, developing capabilities that no other known species possessed. The Academy's first human student had arrived, and the galaxy was about to discover what made humanity truly special. The dormitory corridor stretched endlessly before Squad Omega as they made their way to their assigned quarters. The Academy's housing complex was designed to accommodate various species' needs, with adjustable gravity fields, atmospheric controls, and specialized sleeping arrangements. Each squad shared a common area with individual rooms branching off like spokes on a wheel. Brutus, the massive Gorlak, shouldered past Kira without acknowledgement as they entered their shared space. His footsteps thundered against the reinforced flooring designed to handle his species' considerable weight. The common area featured modular furniture that could adapt to different physiologies, a central holographic display for mission briefings, and a small kitchen unit capable of synthesizing food for various biochemistries. "Great," muttered Jaktar, a Zalani whose crystalline skin reflected the room's ambient lighting in prismatic patterns. His species communicated partially through color changes in their translucent flesh, and right now those colors were displaying clear frustration. "We get stuck with the mystery meat." Velkira, the Keth Mori scout, moved with fluid grace as she claimed the room nearest the exit. Her people valued quick escape routes above comfort, a trait that had kept them alive during their species' violent evolutionary history. "That human looks like she couldn't lift a standard plasma rifle, let alone fire one accurately under combat conditions." Threx's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Kira, scanning her vital signs and attempting to identify any hidden augmentations. The readings he received made no sense. Her heart rate remained steady despite the obvious hostility. Her breathing was controlled, and his sensors detected muscle density that seemed impossible for someone of her apparent build. "Perhaps appearances deceive," offered Nymph, the squad's ethereal representative. His species existed partially in another dimension, making them excellent for reconnaissance missions where physical presence wasn't required. His translucent form flickered slightly as he spoke, a sign of deep thought among his people. Kira moved quietly to the remaining unclaimed room, a small space near the back of the common area. She placed her single bag on the narrow bed and began unpacking with efficient movements. Her belongings were sparse compared to her squad mates' collections of specialized equipment, ceremonial weapons, and technological devices. A few changes of clothing, some personal items, and what appeared to be an ancient paper book were all she carried. "What is that primitive object?" asked Zixal, the insectoid whose compound eyes could see across multiple spectrums simultaneously. His mandibles clicked with curiosity as he pointed at the book with one of his forearms. "Just some reading material," Kira replied, carefully placing the volume on her bedside table. The cover was worn with age, though none of her squad mates could read the strange symbols printed on its surface. Threx's enhanced vision captured the text before she could close it completely. His translation software struggled with the archaic language before finally producing a result that made him pause. The title read "The Art of War" by someone named Sun Tzu. His historical databases contained no reference to this author or text from any known civilization. The squad's attention was interrupted by a soft chime from the central holographic display. Commander Velnara's imposing figure materialized in the center of their common area. her image flickering slightly as the projectors adjusted to the room's dimensions. Squad Omega, your first evaluation begins tomorrow at dawn cycle. You will participate in a combat simulation designed to test your individual capabilities and team coordination. The scenario is a rescue operation on a hostile world. Your target is a downed diplomatic vessel containing VIP passengers who must be extracted within a limited time frame. The display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of a rugged planetary surface. Mountain ranges, dense forests, and what appeared to be enemy installations dotted the landscape. Multiple approach routes were highlighted, each presenting different challenges and opportunities. You will face automated defense systems, environmental hazards, and simulated enemy forces. Your performance will be measured on mission completion time, casualties sustained, and overall tactical efficiency. Failure to complete the mission will result in severe point deductions from your squad's monthly evaluation. Brutus cracked his knuckles, producing sounds like breaking stone. His species thrived in direct combat situations, and the promise of action brought an eager gleam to his small eyes. Finally, something more interesting than orientation speeches. The simulation will adapt to your squad's capabilities, Velnara continued. Expect the unexpected. The Academy's training systems have been refined over 3 centuries to challenge even the most elite forces. Rest well tonight. You will need all your strength tomorrow. The hologram faded, leaving the squad in contemplative silence. Each member began mentally preparing for the coming challenge, drawing on their species' traditional approaches to warfare and tactics. Valkyra was first to speak, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to leading reconnaissance missions. We need to establish our roles immediately. I'll handle advanced scouting and infiltration. My speed and sensory capabilities make me ideal for gathering intelligence. I will take point during any direct engagements, Brutus declared, his massive fists clenching with anticipation. Gorlak armor can withstand most small arms fire, and our strength allows us to breach fortified positions. The squad members continued outlining their capabilities and preferred roles. Threx would provide technological support and heavy weapons fire. Nymph could phase through solid barriers for reconnaissance and sabotage. Jaktar's crystalline physiology made him immune to many energy-based attacks. Zixal's multiple limbs and compound vision made him perfect for complex multitasking operations. Finally, all eyes turned to Kira, who had remained silent throughout the planning session. She sat cross-legged on the modular couch, apparently relaxed despite being the center of attention from 7 potentially hostile aliens. What exactly do you bring to this team? Valkyra asked, her tone making it clear she expected very little from the apparent weakest link. Kira considered the question carefully before responding. I adapt. The simple answer hung in the air like a challenge. Her squadmates exchanged glances that ranged from confusion to outright annoyance. After witnessing displays of incredible strength, speed, technology, and supernatural abilities, their human member claimed nothing more than adaptability. Adapt to what? Threx pressed, his cybernetic components whirring as they processed potential scenarios. Whatever the situation requires, Kira replied calmly. Every problem has a solution. Sometimes that solution requires strength, sometimes speed, sometimes technology. Sometimes it requires something else entirely. Nymph's ethereal form flickered with interest. And what happens when the situation requires capabilities beyond your physical limitations? For the first time since arriving at the academy, Kira smiled. It was the expression that somehow managed to be both reassuring and slightly unsettling. I haven't found those limitations yet. As the squad settled in for their first night together, none of them realized they were about to witness capabilities that would fundamentally challenge their understanding of what was possible for a biological entity. The Academy's training systems were indeed sophisticated, designed to test the absolute limits of each species' abilities. But humanity's limits had been forged in crucibles that the Academy's designers had never imagined. Dawn cycle arrived with the subtle shift in the Academy's artificial lighting system, mimicking natural sunlight to help maintain circadian rhythms for species that required them. Squad Omega gathered in the main corridor outside their dormitory, each member equipped according to their species' traditions and capabilities. Brutus wore thick ceramic plating that covered his vital areas while leaving his massive arms free for combat. Energy cells powered a personal shield generator mounted on his shoulder, creating a shimmering barrier around his torso. His primary weapon was a plasma cannon designed specifically for Gorlak physiology, requiring their considerable strength to operate effectively. Valkyra had chosen lightweight armor that enhanced rather than hindered her natural speed. Multiple small weapons were distributed across her slim frame, each designed for quick deployment and maximum efficiency. Her helmet included advanced sensor arrays that could track multiple targets simultaneously, while filtering environmental data in real time. The other squad members displayed equally impressive equipment. Threx's cybernetic enhancements gleamed under the corridor lighting, integrated weapon systems visible beneath synthetic skin. Nimeth required no equipment at all, his ethereal nature allowing him to phase through most physical barriers. Jaktar's crystalline body could channel and redirect energy attacks, making him a living weapon and shield simultaneously. Kira stood among them wearing simple training fatigues and standard-issue boots. No visible armor, no enhanced weapons, no apparent technological augmentations. Her only equipment was a basic, tactical vest containing what appeared to be standard survival gear and a sidearm that looked primitive compared to her squad mates' advanced weaponry. "Are you certain that equipment is sufficient?" asked Zixel, his compound eyes examining every detail of her minimal preparations. His own exoskeleton was enhanced with targeting computers and ammunition feeds for his four-armed firing stance. "It's what I'm comfortable with," Kira replied, checking the simple chemical projectile weapon at her side. The weapon appeared to be several generations behind current galactic technology, using kinetic force rather than energy projection to damage targets. Transport vehicles arrived to carry them to the simulation facility, a massive complex located in the Academy's outer ring. The journey gave Squad Omega time to study the mission parameters displayed on their squad leader's datapad. The rescue scenario seemed straightforward enough, but experienced warriors knew that apparent simplicity often concealed deadly complications. The simulation chamber was larger than some starships, its walls lined with holographic projectors capable of creating completely realistic environments. As Squad Omega entered the staging area, they could see other squads preparing for their own evaluations in adjacent chambers. The competitive atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a blade. "Simulation commencing in 60 seconds, announced the Academy's artificial intelligence system. Scenario parameters. Hostile world designation, Kepler 442b. Enemy forces. Automated defense grid plus estimated 200 humanoid combatants. Mission objective. Extract 6 VIP passengers from crashed diplomatic vessel. Time limit, 4 hours standard." The chamber walls flickered, and suddenly Squad Omega found themselves standing on a rocky hillside overlooking a vast valley. The air was thin but breathable, with a reddish tint that suggested a different stellar primary than most inhabited worlds. In the distance, smoke rose from what appeared to be the wreckage of a large spacecraft. Between their position and the crash site lay a complex maze of obstacles. Enemy patrols moved along predictable routes. Automated turrets scanned the landscape with deadly precision, and natural hazards, including unstable terrain and toxic gas vents, added additional layers of danger. "Analysis complete," Threx announced after his sensors finished their initial scan. "Defensive grid is based on Kethlock technology, approximately 15 years outdated. I can disable most systems if we can reach the main control node located here." He highlighted a fortified position roughly halfway to their objective. Valkyra was already in motion, using her enhanced speed to scout their immediate area. She returned within minutes, her breathing barely elevated despite covering several kilometers of rough terrain. 3 patrol routes intersect near our position. Timing windows are narrow but manageable if we move precisely. The squad began implementing a plan based on their established strengths. Brutus would create a diversion at the primary defensive line, drawing attention while the others infiltrated through secondary routes. Nimeth would phase through solid barriers to sabotage key systems from within. Each member had a specific role optimized for their unique capabilities. Kira listened to the tactical discussion without contributing, her dark eyes scanning the terrain with an intensity that seemed out of place for someone supposedly inexperienced in military operations. When the squad leaders finished outlining their approach, she spoke quietly. "The plan has 3 critical flaws." The statement brought immediate attention from her squad mates. Valkyra's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, interpreting the criticism as a challenge to her leadership. Brutus turned his massive frame to face the human, his expression darkening with anger. Explain, demanded Threx, his cybernetic eye focusing on her with mechanical precision. Kira pointed toward the enemy patrol routes that Valkyra had identified. Those patterns are too regular. This is a simulation designed to test Academy students, which means it will adapt to punish predictable thinking. The moment we commit to exploiting those patrol timings, the system will alter them to catch us in the open. She shifted her attention to the defensive grid that Threx had analyzed. The technology appears outdated because that's what the simulation wants you to think. Academy systems don't use inferior equipment for testing purposes. Those defenses are designed to look vulnerable while concealing more advanced capabilities. Nymph's ethereal form flickered with interest. His species had learned to be cautious of obvious opportunities during their long history of interdimensional conflicts. What would you suggest instead? We stop thinking like traditional military forces, Kira said simply. Every species in this squad brings overwhelming advantages in specific areas. The simulation knows this and has prepared countermeasures for standard tactical approaches. We need to do something it doesn't expect. Brutus snorted with derision, his patience wearing thin. And what does a human know about military tactics that the rest of us don't? Kira's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her posture. A subtle change that somehow made her appear more dangerous despite her lack of visible weapons or armor.
My species learned warfare from a different teacher than yours. Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding across the valley.
The simulation had detected their presence and was beginning its active response phase. Enemy patrols shifted from predictable routes to active search patterns. Automated turrets swiveled toward their position with mechanical precision. Decision time, Valkyra announced, her natural leadership instincts taking over. We follow the original plan unless someone has a better alternative. Kira stepped forward, her movement fluid and confident in a way that seemed to transform her from weakest squad member to something entirely different. Give me 30 seconds to reach that observation post. She pointed to a rocky outcropping nearly a kilometer away across exposed terrain. Then begin your diversion exactly as planned. The request was impossible. Even Valkyra, with her species' legendary speed, would need several minutes to cover that distance while avoiding detection. The terrain offered minimal cover, and the approach would require crossing multiple kill zones under direct observation from automated systems. That's suicide, Brutus stated flatly. You'll be cut down before you make it halfway. Kira checked her primitive kinetic weapon one final time, then looked back at her squad mates with that same unsettling smile from the previous night. Probably. But if I'm right about adaptation being my advantage, then this simulation is about to learn something new about human capabilities. Without waiting for permission or further discussion, she began moving down the hillside toward what appeared to be certain death. Her squad mates watched in fascination and horror as their mysterious human member put herself directly into the path of the Academy's most sophisticated combat training systems. None of them realized they were about to witness the first demonstration of why humanity had remained hidden in the galactic community for so long, and why their emergence would change everything the other species thought they knew about warfare. Kira moved across the hostile terrain with a fluid efficiency that defied explanation. Where her squad mates expected to see desperate sprinting or careful stealth, they witnessed something entirely different. She seemed to flow through the landscape like water finding its path, never moving in straight lines but somehow always progressing toward her objective. The first automated turret detected her movement and swiveled to engage. Energy bolts scorched the ground where she had been milliseconds before, but she was no longer there. Not dodging in the conventional sense, but somehow anticipating the weapon's targeting algorithms and moving to where the shots wouldn't be. Impossible, breathed Threx, his cybernetic enhancements struggling to track her movement patterns. His targeting computers couldn't establish a predictive lock on her position, as if she was somehow moving outside the mathematical models that governed battlefield analysis. Valkyra's enhanced reflexes allowed her to follow Kira's progress better than the others, but what she saw made no sense according to everything she knew about combat movement. The human wasn't faster than her species, wasn't stronger than Brutus, didn't possess Nymph's phasing abilities or Jaktar's energy resistance. Yet she was accomplishing something none of them could have managed. A patrol of simulated enemy soldiers spotted Kira and opened fire with coordinated precision. Their weapons were programmed to predict and intercept moving targets using algorithms developed over centuries of warfare. The energy beams formed an overlapping pattern of destruction that should have been impossible to escape. Kira flowed through the deadly light show like she was dancing to music only she could hear. Every movement seemed purposeful yet effortless, each step taking her exactly where she needed to be to avoid detection or destruction. She wasn't just avoiding the enemy attacks. She was making the automated systems work against each other. She's using their own coordination against them, Zixal observed, his compound eyes tracking multiple elements of the engagement simultaneously. Look at the turret positions. She's moving so that when they target her, their firing solutions cross each other's operational zones. Indeed, the automated systems were beginning to interfere with each other as they attempted to track an opponent who moved like no other species they had been programmed to engage. Targeting computers designed for predictable, military movement patterns found themselves calculating solutions for an entity that seemed to exist partially outside their tactical assumptions. But the most remarkable aspect of Kira's advance wasn't her movement. It was her weapon usage. The primitive kinetic projectile device that had seemed so outdated compared to her squadmates' equipment was proving devastatingly effective in ways none of them had anticipated. While energy weapons required power cells, cooling periods, and targeting computers, Kira's ancient firearm operated on purely mechanical principles. She fired not at where targets were, but at where they would be forced to move when other elements of the defensive grid responded to her presence. Each shot seemed random until its effect became apparent seconds later. A single projectile struck a sensor cluster just as an automated turret was attempting to recalibrate its targeting solution. The minor damage cascaded through the network, causing 3 other defensive systems to lose target lock at the critical moment. Another shot penetrated a ventilation grate, allowing toxic gas from the planet's natural environment to begin flooding an enemy command post. She's not just fighting the simulation, Nimeth realized, his ethereal form flickering with excitement. She's turning it into a weapon against itself. Kira reached the observation post in exactly 30 seconds, just as she had promised. Her squadmates watched through their enhanced optics as she immediately began what appeared to be a detailed analysis of the enemy positions below, but her actions suggested she was seeing patterns and connections that their advanced sensors couldn't detect. The crash site lay spread across a rocky plateau, surrounded by concentric rings of defensive positions. Standard tactical doctrine would require either overwhelming force to breach the perimeter or sophisticated stealth technology to infiltrate undetected. Squad Omega possessed neither advantage in sufficient quantity to guarantee success. But as Kira studied the layout, she was identifying something entirely different. The simulation's designers had created a realistic defensive scenario, but realistic meant following logical principles of military engineering, and logical principles meant predictable weaknesses for someone who understood how systems interacted with each other. Her voice came through their communication system with crystal clarity. Begin the diversion now. Brutus advanced directly toward grid reference 77 Alpha. When the defensive turrets engage you, count to 15, then retreat to your current position. Brutus hesitated, his tactical training warring with his instinct to trust the mysterious human. The position she had indicated was a killing field, deliberately designed to channel attackers into overlapping fields of fire. Advancing into that zone was tactical suicide. Do it, Valkyra ordered, her command authority overriding her personal doubts. Something about Kira's calm confidence suggested she had identified factors the rest of them had missed. The massive Gorlak warrior charged toward the designated position, his personal shields flaring as they absorbed the first impacts from automated weapons. Energy beams converged on his position from multiple directions, creating a light show that could be seen across the valley. His armor held against the initial barrage, but everyone knew it wouldn't last long under such concentrated fire. Kira's voice cut through the noise of battle. Threx, disable the power coupling at grid reference 427 exactly 20 seconds from now. Nymph, phase through the northern perimeter wall and sabotage the atmospheric recycling system in Building 3. Valkyra, prepare for rapid advance along Route Delta 7 when I give the signal. The instructions came in rapid succession, each seemingly impossible or pointless. The power coupling Threx was ordered to target wasn't connected to any obvious defensive systems. The atmospheric recycling system that Nymph was supposed to sabotage was inside a building nowhere near the crash site. The advance route Valkyra was told to prepare was directly through the most heavily defended section of the perimeter. But Brutus was following orders, counting down his 15 seconds under devastating fire. His shields were failing and his armor was showing stress fractures from repeated impacts. Just as he reached the count and began his retreat, something extraordinary happened. The coordinated defensive fire that had been concentrated on his position suddenly shifted. Every automated system simultaneously retargeted to different grid coordinates, allowing Brutus to withdraw without taking a single additional hit. The simulation's targeting computers had detected what they interpreted as multiple new threats and redistributed their fire accordingly. "How did you know?" Threx asked as he reached the designated power coupling and prepared to disable it. Kira's response came with the calm certainty of someone who understood principles her squad mates hadn't even considered. "Because every system has rules it must follow, and once you understand the rules, you can make them work for you instead of against you." As each squad member executed their assigned tasks, the defensive grid began responding exactly as Kira had predicted. But her squad mates were beginning to realize that her predictions weren't based on superior technology or enhanced abilities. She was somehow thinking several steps ahead of the simulation itself, anticipating how complex systems would react to carefully orchestrated stimuli. The Academy's most sophisticated training scenario was being systematically dismantled by someone who appeared to possess no special advantages beyond an understanding of how to make enemies defeat themselves. Squad Omega was witnessing the first demonstration of humanity's greatest military asset, and none of them yet understood what they were seeing. The defensive grid collapsed like a house of cards, each system failure triggering cascading malfunctions throughout the network. What had appeared to be an impregnable fortress moments before was now revealing gaps and vulnerabilities that seemed to open exactly where Squad Omega needed them. Most Threx disabled the power coupling as instructed, expecting minimal impact on the overall defensive posture. Instead, the action triggered a feedback loop that temporarily overloaded 3 separate automated turrets. The brief window of opportunity was precisely timed to coincide with Nymph completing his sabotage mission, creating a corridor of reduced defensive coverage that appeared to lead directly toward the crash site. "Valkyra, advance now along Route Delta 7. Kira's voice carried absolute confidence despite the apparent impossibility of her request. The route she had designated still passed through multiple kill zones that should have made it impassable for any ground-based approach. But as the Kethmori scout began her high-speed advance, she discovered that Kira's careful orchestration had transformed the tactical landscape. Automated systems were cycling through diagnostic routines triggered by the atmospheric sabotage. Enemy patrols were responding to false alarms generated by the power grid fluctuations. Sensor networks were attempting to recalibrate after losing primary targeting data. The path that had been a death trap minutes earlier was now a corridor of opportunity, but only for someone moving with exactly the right timing and trajectory. Valkyra's enhanced speed carried her through the gaps in defensive coverage like threading a needle, each step landing precisely where enemy systems couldn't effectively engage her. "This is impossible," Brutus muttered as he watched the seemingly impregnable defensive line crumble before their coordinated assault. His species had conquered star systems through superior firepower and tactical doctrine, but he had never witnessed anything like the systematic dismantling of enemy defenses through pure strategic thinking. Kira's voice came through their communications again, this time with new instructions that seemed even more outrageous than her previous commands. "Jaktar, channel your energy absorption capability toward grid reference 99 Charlie. Don't try to damage anything. Just draw as much power as you can handle from the local grid network." The crystalline warrior moved toward the designated position, his translucent body already beginning to glow as it prepared to absorb incoming energy attacks. But instead of weapons fire, he found himself positioned next to a major power distribution node that was struggling to maintain system stability after Threx's sabotage efforts. As Jaktar began drawing power from the grid, his species' natural ability to absorb and redirect energy created an unexpected drain on the defensive network. Emergency protocols engaged automatically, attempting to compensate for the sudden power loss by redistributing energy from other systems throughout the complex. The result was a cascade failure that shut down entire sections of the defensive perimeter just as Squad Omega reached the outer boundaries of the crash site. What should have been the most heavily defended approach became a clear path forward. as if the simulation itself was cooperating with their infiltration attempt. How could you have known the power grid would react that way? Zixal asked, his compound eyes trying to process the complex web of cause and effect that Kira had somehow predicted and exploited. Every system is designed to protect itself, Kira replied, her tone suggesting she was explaining something fundamental that should have been obvious. When you understand what a system considers threats to its own survival, you can make it choose between protecting itself and accomplishing its mission. They reached the crashed diplomatic vessel to find it partially buried under rocky debris from the impact. The ship's hull was cracked but intact, its emergency life support systems maintaining atmospheric pressure for any survivors inside. According to their mission parameters, 6 VIP passengers were trapped within the wreckage and needed immediate extraction. But as Squad Omega approached the crash site, they discovered that the simulation had one final challenge waiting for them. A massive automated defense platform rose from a concealed position near the wreckage, its weapon systems designed to prevent any rescue attempts. The platform was heavily armored and equipped with enough firepower to eliminate their entire squad within seconds. That wasn't in the tactical analysis, Valkyra observed, her enhanced reflexes already calculating escape routes from their exposed position. The defense platform's sensors were locking onto each squad member, preparing to engage with overwhelming force. Brutus raised his plasma cannon, knowing it would be ineffective against the platform's heavy armor, but unwilling to surrender without a fight. Threx's cybernetic systems began analyzing the construct's design, searching for potential weaknesses that might be exploited with precise targeting. But Kira was studying the defense platform with a different perspective, looking not at its weapons or armor, but at its fundamental purpose and operational constraints. Her analysis revealed something that her squadmates' technological advantages had missed entirely. "Nobody move," she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that stopped every squad member in their tracks. "That platform isn't designed to prevent rescue operations. It's designed to prevent unauthorized access to the diplomatic vessel's cargo." The distinction seemed meaningless to her squadmates, who were still staring down the barrel of enough firepower to level a small building. But Kira was already walking directly toward the defense platform, her hands visible and her primitive weapon holstered. "The simulation parameters specified that we're conducting a rescue operation for VIP passengers," she continued, her steps slow and deliberate as she approached the massive automated weapon system. "But they didn't specify whether we're authorized rescuers or hostile forces attempting to capture those passengers." The defense platform's sensors tracked her movement but didn't fire, its programming apparently unable to classify her approach as definitively hostile or friendly. The system was designed to protect the diplomatic vessel, but unclear authorization protocols were creating hesitation in its targeting algorithms. Kira reached into her tactical vest and withdrew what appeared to be a simple identification device, the kind issued to all academy students for accessing training facilities. She held it up toward the platform's sensors, her movements careful but confident. "Student identification Kira Chen, Celestial Defense Institute, conducting authorized rescue operation under academy training protocols," she announced clearly. "Request permission to proceed with VIP extraction procedures." For several long seconds, nothing happened. The defense platform's weapons remained trained on Squad Omega, while its computer systems processed the identification request against its programmed authorization database. The simulation's designers had apparently never considered that students might attempt to convince defensive systems that they were legitimate rescue forces rather than hostile infiltrators. Finally, the platform's weapons swiveled away from Squad Omega and returned to their scanning positions. A mechanical voice announced, "Authorization confirmed. Proceed with rescue operations. Warning: unauthorized personnel detected in the area. Maintain safe distance from diplomatic vessel cargo compartments." Kira turned back toward her squadmates, that same unsettling smile crossing her features again. Sometimes the most effective weapon is making your enemies uncertain about whether you're actually an enemy. As Squad Omega began their extraction of the VIP passengers, they were beginning to understand that their human squadmate operated according to principles that none of their species had developed. She wasn't stronger, faster, or more technologically advanced than her companions, but she possessed something that might be even more valuable in the long term: the ability to make complex systems work against themselves through nothing more than understanding their fundamental nature and operational constraints. It was a capability that would prove increasingly important as the Academy's training scenarios became more sophisticated and challenging. The extraction of the VIP passengers proceeded with remarkable efficiency once the defense platform had been neutralized through Kira's unconventional approach. Inside the crashed diplomatic vessel, Squad Omega discovered 6 individuals representing different species from across the galactic community, each requiring specialized life support considerations during the rescue operation. The passengers included a crystalline ambassador whose silicon-based physiology needed specific atmospheric conditions, an elderly Gorlak dignitary whose massive frame presented logistical challenges for transport, and 4 other beings whose various biological requirements would normally have made simultaneous evacuation nearly impossible. Standard protocol requires sequential extraction, Valkyra announced after assessing the situation. We lack the equipment to maintain life support for all 6 passengers during simultaneous transport back to the extraction point. The limitation was accurate according to conventional rescue doctrine. Each species required different atmospheric mixtures, gravitational adjustments, and temperature controls that their portable life support units couldn't provide simultaneously. Sequential extraction would require multiple trips across hostile territory, consuming precious time and exposing the squad to additional defensive systems that might still be operational. But Kira was studying the problem from a different angle, examining not just the technical limitations but the fundamental assumptions underlying their approach to the rescue mission. Her analysis revealed possibilities that hadn't occurred to her squad mates despite their advanced equipment and specialized training. We don't need to maintain optimal life support for all passengers, she observed, checking the environmental readings inside the crashed vessel. We just need to keep them alive long enough to reach safety. Most species can tolerate suboptimal conditions for short periods if the alternative is remaining in a combat zone. Threx's cybernetic enhancements had been monitoring the passengers' vital signs since their arrival. His readings showed stress levels but no immediate life-threatening conditions among any of the trapped individuals. Temporary life support degradation would be survivable, but the risk factors increase exponentially with transport time. Then we minimize transport time, Kira replied, her attention shifting to the terrain between their current position and the extraction coordinates. The defensive grid shutdown created a window of opportunity, but it won't last indefinitely. We need to move all passengers simultaneously using the fastest possible route. The fastest route led directly through the center of the complex, past multiple defensive installations that had been temporarily disabled, but could reactivate at any moment. Standard military doctrine would classify such an approach as reckless endangerment of civilian lives. But Kira's analysis suggested it might actually be the safest option available. Nymph, can you phase through the facility's central command structure and determine how long before primary defensive systems come back online? She asked, her tactical planning proceeding with the same systematic efficiency they had witnessed during her dismantling of the automated defenses. The ethereal scout's translucent form flickered as he shifted into his phasing state, becoming incorporeal enough to pass through solid barriers. Within minutes, he had penetrated the facility's core systems and returned with detailed intelligence about the defensive network's current status. Automated systems are cycling through diagnostic routines, he reported. Full operational capacity will be restored in approximately 18 minutes. However, manual override controls are accessible from the central command post. If someone could reach that location, they could extend the diagnostic cycle indefinitely. The command post was located in the most heavily fortified section of the complex, surrounded by backup defensive systems that hadn't been affected by their earlier sabotage efforts. Reaching it would require penetrating through layers of security that even Squad Omega's combined capabilities might not be able to overcome. But Kira was already moving toward the command post, her assessment of the tactical situation apparently leading to conclusions that differed from her squad mates' analysis. They watched in growing concern as she began advancing directly toward what appeared to be a suicide mission. Her only equipment still consisting of the primitive kinetic weapon and basic survival gear. This is insane, Brutus declared, his protective instincts warring with his respect for the results she had achieved so far. Those backup defenses weren't affected by our sabotage operations. You'll be facing fully operational automated systems designed to stop exactly this kind of infiltration attempt. Kira paused at the edge of cover, checking her weapon one final time before committing to the advance. When she looked back at her squad mates, her expression held the same calm confidence they had seen throughout the mission. Those systems are designed to stop infiltration attempts by known military forces using conventional tactics, she corrected. But I'm not using conventional tactics, and I'm not operating as a conventional military force. Without further explanation, she began moving toward the command post using the same fluid efficiency that had characterized her earlier advances. But this time, instead of avoiding the defensive systems, she was moving directly toward them with apparent disregard for the obvious dangers. The automated turrets detected her approach and swiveled to engage, their targeting computers calculating firing solutions for the approaching threat. Energy beams lanced out toward her position with mechanical precision, but somehow never quite managed to achieve target lock on her actual location. Watching through enhanced optics, her squad mates realized that Kira wasn't just avoiding the automated weapons. She was communicating with them in a way that confused their targeting algorithms without triggering their automatic engagement protocols. Her movement patterns suggested someone fleeing in panic rather than advancing with hostile intent. She's making them classify her as a non-combatant refugee rather than an enemy infiltrator, Zixal observed, his compound eyes tracking the subtle distinctions in her behavior that were apparently influencing the defensive system's threat assessment routines. Indeed, the automated systems were responding to Kira's approach as if she were a civilian casualty, attempting to escape the combat zone, rather than a military operative conducting a sabotage mission. Their programming included protocols for avoiding unnecessary casualties among non-combatants, creating hesitation in their engagement algorithms that she was systematically exploiting. By the time she reached the command post, the defensive systems had essentially escorted her to her destination, while attempting to guide her toward what they calculated as safer evacuation routes. Her primitive appearance and apparent panic had convinced sophisticated military algorithms that she represented no threat to facility security. Inside the command post, Kira quickly located the manual override controls that Nymph had identified. But instead of simply extending the diagnostic cycle as planned, she began implementing something far more comprehensive. Her fingers moved across the control interfaces with surprising familiarity, accessing systems and protocols that shouldn't have been available to someone without advanced technical training. Diagnostic cycle extended indefinitely, her voice came through their communication system. But I've also accessed the facility's core programming. This entire defensive complex is now operating under Academy training protocols, rather than combat engagement parameters. The implications of her statement became clear as Squad Omega began their extraction of the VIP passengers. The automated systems that had been programmed to prevent unauthorized access were now actively assisting with the rescue operation, treating the entire scenario as a training exercise rather than a hostile infiltration. Transport vehicles emerged from concealed positions to assist with passenger evacuation. Medical equipment became available for maintaining life support during transport. Even the facility's navigation systems began providing optimal routes to the extraction coordinates, treating Squad Omega as authorized rescue personnel rather than enemy forces. How did you know the training protocols would override the combat programming? Valkyra asked as they loaded the last of the VIP passengers into the evacuation vehicles. Kira's response revealed the fundamental principle that had guided her tactical decisions throughout the entire mission. Because every system has a hierarchy of priorities, and in an academy training facility, educational objectives will always take precedence over simulated combat scenarios. As Squad Omega completed their mission in record time with 0 casualties, they began to understand that their human squad mate possessed advantages that had nothing to do with superior technology or enhanced physical capabilities. She understood systems and their underlying motivations in ways that allowed her to make them work toward her objectives rather than against them. It was a capability that would prove increasingly valuable as their training progressed, and the Academy's challenges became more sophisticated and unpredictable. Squad Omega's return to the Academy created immediate attention throughout the institution. Their mission completion time of 2 hours and 37 minutes had shattered the previous record by over an hour. and they had achieved perfect scores in all evaluation categories. Most remarkably, they had accomplished this while suffering 0 casualties and completing secondary objectives that most squads never even attempted. Commander Zethkar was waiting for them in the debriefing chamber, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the mission data on his portable display. Around him, other Academy instructors observed through one-way viewing panels, their interest clearly focused on understanding how such unprecedented results had been achieved. The simulation monitoring systems recorded some unusual tactical decisions during your mission, Zethkar began, his attention shifting between the squad members as he spoke. Several of your approaches deviated significantly from established military doctrine. I'm particularly interested in understanding the reasoning behind these choices. The debriefing proceeded through standard protocols, with each squad member explaining their role in the mission's success. Brutus described his diversionary assault and tactical withdrawal. Valkyra detailed her high-speed infiltration through defensive corridors. Threx explained his sabotage of the power grid systems. Each contribution had been essential to the overall success. But when the questioning reached Kira, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted noticeably. Her actions had been central to every major breakthrough during the mission, yet her explanations revealed thinking patterns that didn't match any known military training or tactical doctrine. You convinced automated defensive systems to classify you as a non-combatant refugee, Zethkar observed, reading from his detailed mission logs. This approach isn't covered in any academy curriculum or known military manual. Where did you learn such techniques? Kira considered her response carefully before answering. My species developed different approaches to conflict resolution during our evolutionary history. We learned to survive by understanding how other entities think, and making them choose options that benefit everyone involved. The explanation was truthful, but incomplete, and everyone in the chamber could sense the deeper implications behind her words. Zethkar's experience with hundreds of, different species had taught him to recognize when someone was carefully limiting their disclosure of information. The Academy's records indicate that your species designation remains classified, he continued, his tone becoming more formal as the debriefing shifted into what appeared to be a more serious investigation. This is highly unusual for a training institution that requires complete transparency about student capabilities and limitations. Through the one-way viewing panels, senior Academy officials were conducting their own analysis of Squad Omega's performance data. The tactical innovations demonstrated during the mission had implications far beyond simple training scores. If these techniques could be taught to other students, they would revolutionize military doctrine throughout the galactic community. But the officials were also concerned about the classified nature of the human student's background. Academy protocols required full disclosure of all student capabilities to ensure training scenarios could be properly calibrated for safety and educational effectiveness. Unknown capabilities could create dangerous situations during advanced training exercises. I'm authorized to share what I consider necessary for training purposes, Kira replied diplomatically. My species prefers to maintain privacy about our capabilities until we better understand how other civilizations might react to our presence in the galactic community. The statement confirmed what many Academy officials had suspected since reviewing her mission performance. Humanity represented a previously unknown spacefaring civilization with military capabilities that differed significantly from established galactic norms. The implications for interstellar politics and military strategy were potentially enormous. Zethkar glanced toward the viewing panels, clearly receiving instructions through his concealed communication device. When he returned his attention to Squad Omega, his expression had become more serious than any of them had seen during their time at the Academy. Squad Omega will continue training under enhanced observation protocols, he announced. Your performance has attracted attention from Academy leadership and potentially from galactic military organizations. This level of interest brings both opportunities and responsibilities that extend far beyond normal student obligations. For Kira's squad mates, the revelation that their human companion represented an unknown civilization explained many of the mysteries surrounding her capabilities, but it also raised new questions about her true objectives at the Academy and the long-term implications of humanity's emergence into galactic society. What does this mean for our continued training? Valkyra asked, her tactical mind already calculating the potential complications of increased scrutiny from Academy officials and external military observers. It means you'll be tested in ways that go beyond normal Academy curriculum, Zethkar replied. Your squad has demonstrated tactical innovations that could change how the galaxy approaches military conflict. There will be significant interest in understanding whether these techniques can be taught to others or if they represent unique advantages possessed only by your human member. Prospect of becoming test subjects for military research wasn't appealing to any of Squad Omega's members, but they also recognized the strategic importance of their situation. Their performance had established them as the Academy's top-ranked squad after only a single mission, but it had also made them the focus of attention from forces much larger than the Academy itself. As the debriefing concluded and Squad Omega returned to their dormitory, they carried with them the knowledge that their time at the Academy would be unlike any other student's experience. They had proven that human tactical thinking could revolutionize military doctrine, but they had also revealed that humanity possessed capabilities that might fundamentally alter the balance of power in galactic civilization. Kira settled into her room that evening, finally opening the ancient book she had brought from Earth. The worn pages contained wisdom about warfare and strategy that had been developed over thousands of years of human conflict, principles that her species had refined through countless generations of survival. On one of the galaxy's most challenging worlds, her squadmates had witnessed only the beginning of what humanity could contribute to galactic military science. The techniques she had demonstrated during their first mission represented basic applications of strategic thinking that every human learned during their education. More advanced principles waited to be revealed as their training progressed, and the Academy's challenges became more sophisticated, but she also understood that humanity's emergence into galactic society would need to be carefully managed. The other species weren't ready to understand the full scope of human capabilities, and revealing too much too quickly could create fear rather than cooperation among the galaxy's established civilizations. As she prepared for sleep, Kira reflected on the delicate balance between demonstrating enough capability to earn respect while maintaining enough mystery to prevent panic. Her mission at the Academy extended far beyond simply graduating as a military officer. She was serving as humanity's first ambassador to galactic civilization, and the success or failure of that mission would determine whether her species could find a peaceful place among the stars. The Academy's elite training program was about to become something unprecedented in its 300-year history. For the first time, they would be educating not just individual students, but potentially preparing the galaxy for the emergence of a civilization whose approach to warfare and conflict resolution operated according to entirely different principles than anything they had encountered before Squad Omega had achieved perfect scores on their first mission. But their real test was just beginning. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's future among the stars would be determined by how well they could demonstrate that their capabilities represented opportunities for cooperation rather than threats to existing civilizations.